Hi, everyone. Today we are stepping into a story that still stuns me every time I tell it. You might not believe in prayer until you watch this. Previously, we met David, a logical, hardworking man whose marriage crumbled under the weight of silence, stress, and unspoken resentment. His wife, Emily, left with no real explanation other than, "I can't breathe anymore." For months, he refused to pray until one night he cracked. That first night of prayer wasn't beautiful. It wasn't calm or poetic. It was raw, aching, and unfiltered. I remember screaming into my pillow so the neighbors wouldn't hear. "I don't know if you're there, but if you are, help me, please. Just help me make sense of this." Nothing happened, not right away. I woke up the next morning still alone, still aching, still with Emily gone. But something had shifted. I didn't know it then, but that night was the beginning of a strange kind of peace. Not the kind that makes you dance through your kitchen with joy, the kind that just says, "Keep breathing." And I did. For the first time in months, I got up and made breakfast. Not because I wanted to eat bacon, but because I didn't want to collapse again. That morning, I found her mug in the back of the cabinet, the one with the chipped lip and the faded "World's Okayest Mom" lettering. I held it and I wept. But this time, my tears didn't feel like the end. They felt like a release. I started walking. Every day I'd walk the trail behind our house, just talking to the sky. Some days I cursed, some days I begged. Some days I just sat and said nothing at all. But every day I showed up. Something started changing in me. I became softer. I started remembering things I hadn't thought about in years. The way Emily used to tuck her foot under my leg when we watched TV. The way she hummed off key in the kitchen. The way she'd brush the hair out of my eyes without saying a word. I missed her. Not the idea of being married. Not the convenience of companionship. Her. And so one day, months after I had last seen her, I wrote a letter. I didn't send it. I just wrote it and left it in my Bible. "Dear Emily, I miss you more than I can say. I don't know what I did wrong, but I'm sorry. I know I wasn't listening, really listening. And I'm trying now, I'm praying now. I'm trying to be someone worth coming home to. No pressure, no expectations. Just love. David." The next morning, for no reason I can explain, I sent it. I didn't think she'd answer. But she did. 2 days later, a reply came. "I've been praying too." I froze. She had been praying. That small line shattered something in me. In all our silence, pain, and distance, she had been reaching out to God too. Her letter wasn't long. She didn't say she was coming back, but she said something I'll never forget. "I don't know where this goes, but I want to talk." So we talked. At first it was awkward, painful, careful, but we talked, and in the weeks that followed, something softened in her too. She said, "You feel different." I said, "And I am." We both were. Prayer hadn't fixed our problems like magic, but it had opened a door that led to a version of us we'd almost forgotten. One night we met for coffee, and as we sat under those cheap string lights, she looked at me and whispered, "I think I still love you." That was the beginning of our second first date. Now, years later, we still have to work at it. We still have arguments and old patterns. But now, every morning we pray together. Just 5 minutes, sometimes in silence, sometimes with words. But we show up every day. Prayer didn't just bring my wife back, it brought me back. And if you're in that place right now where it feels like God is silent, where your heart is shattered, where you've tried everything else, maybe it's time to just show up. Not perfectly, just honestly. Because sometimes prayer doesn't change the situation right away. Sometimes it changes you. If you've ever stood at the edge of losing everything, and I mean everything, then what I'm about to share might feel painfully familiar. After my wife left, the days bled into one another. Mornings didn't start, they just continued from sleepless nights. I'd make coffee out of habit, only to let it go cold on the counter. The sound of silence in our home was louder than any fight we'd ever had. And for a while I blamed her. I made her the villain in my head. It was easier that way. She walked out, I told myself. She gave up. But here's the part most people don't tell. You blaming someone else doesn't stop the pain. It just buries it. And what's buried has a way of surfacing when you least expect it. One night, about a month after she left, I came home from work, sat in my car in the driveway, and just didn't go inside. I couldn't. The emptiness waiting behind that front door felt heavier than I could carry. So I sat there for hours until the porch light flickered on by itself, one of those little timers we'd set years ago. I laughed. Not a happy laugh, the kind that's more of a release, half madness, half misery. I said out loud, well, at least something in this house still works. And then, almost without realizing it, I whispered something else. God, are you even there? It wasn't a prayer, not really, just a question thrown into the void. But maybe that's where prayer starts. Not with fancy words or folded hands, but with raw, broken honesty. I didn't believe in prayer. Not truly. I thought it was a crutch for people who couldn't face reality. And yet, in that moment, I reached for it like a drowning man reaches for driftwood. Not because I was sure it would hold me, but because there was nothing else left. That night, I slept on the couch in my clothes. I didn't bother with dinner. I didn't check my phone. I didn't even cry. I was just empty, and then the dream started. Not the surreal kind, with floating clocks or impossible places. No, these dreams were memories, real moments, conversations we'd had years ago. Laughter, little glances, our wedding day, the night she told me she was pregnant, the morning we found out we'd lost that baby. I woke up sweating, heart pounding, as if my soul had been trying to remind me of something I'd tried to forget. It hit me like a freight train. I hadn't just lost my wife. I'd lost the love. Somewhere along the line, I stopped showing up. I stopped choosing her. I got caught in the grind, work, bills, responsibilities, and forgot that love is active. And here's the hardest part to admit. She didn't leave me. She left the version of me that stopped fighting for us. That next morning, I sat on the porch with my cold coffee, and for the first time in years, I really prayed. No eloquence, just tears. God, if there's still a way, please show me. If you've ever prayed not with words but with your whole soul, then you know what came next wasn't fireworks or angel choirs. It wasn't a miracle that came wrapped in lightning and thunder. It was silence, but not the crushing kind I'd felt in the days before. This silence, it was different. It was steady, solid, like someone had walked into the room and just sat beside me, without saying anything, without needing to. I didn't tell anyone I had started praying, not even my buddies at work, not even my pastor. Honestly, I was embarrassed. Maybe the guy who used to scoff at people who said, "I'm praying for you," now sitting on my porch whispering desperate pleas to the sky. But that's what pain does. It breaks down the walls you built out of pride. So every morning after that night of dreams, I'd sit in the same chair. Same time, cold coffee, and I'd talk to God. Some days I told him I was angry. Some days I didn't say anything. I just sat there and hoped he was listening. And slowly, very slowly, something began to shift. Not in my circumstances. My wife was still gone. The house was still too quiet. I still felt the sting of her absence every time I passed by our wedding photo in the hallway. But the shift was in me. I started noticing the way the sunlight fell through the blinds at 7 a.m. I started texting old friends, not to complain, but to ask how they were doing. I started apologizing to people I hadn't spoken to in years, people I'd hurt and moved on from, people I had forgotten I even needed to say sorry to. That's the thing about prayer, real prayer. It doesn't just ask for things to change. It changes you in the asking. A few weeks in, I wrote my wife a letter, not an email, not a long text, a real letter, pen and paper. My hands shook the whole time. I didn't try to convince her to come back. I didn't list all the things I was going to change. I just said I was sorry. I told her I'd finally realized how blind I'd been, that I wasn't praying for us to go back to the way things were. I was praying to become the man she once saw in me. And then I left the letter at her sister's place, folded into an envelope that smelled faintly of coffee, because that's the life I was living now, coffee and prayer. I didn't hear back. For 2 weeks, nothing. Until one afternoon, I came home to find a single sticky note on the door. Her handwriting. It said, "I read your letter. I'm not ready to talk, but I'm glad you wrote it." That was it. No promises, no breakthroughs. But it was a crack in the wall, a tiny one. But cracks let the light in, and in that moment, it felt like hope was coming home. They say love is patient, and I never truly understood what that meant until I had to love someone enough to wait without expecting. After that note she left, the one taped to my door, the one that gave me hope. I didn't chase her. I didn't send flowers. I didn't flood her inbox with more apologies. I kept praying, not just for her to come back, but for her to be okay. And more importantly, for God to keep working on me, even if she never did return. You see, I realized something during those long weeks. I used to pray for her, but now I started praying about me, about what I had overlooked, about the ways I had failed to be present. I had always thought that being a provider, paying bills, fixing leaks, bringing home groceries was enough. But love needs more than provision. It needs intention. It needs noticing the way her voice gets softer when she's tired. It needs remembering the stories she tells you in passing, so you can bring them up again later, just to show you listened. It needs holding her hand when she's not asking for it, and especially when she is but doesn't say it out loud. I missed all of that for years, and now I was learning it the hard way, alone. But even in that loneliness, I wasn't the same man anymore. One morning, about a month after that note, I got a text from her. "Would you like to meet for coffee? Just to talk." My heart almost stopped, not because I thought everything would be okay again, but because it was something. I met her at a little corner cafe neither of us had ever been to before. Maybe that was intentional. Maybe it felt safer to meet somewhere with no history, a clean slate. She looked tired, but still beautiful. And when she smiled, even just politely, I could see the woman I had once made 1,000 promises to. The conversation wasn't magical. It wasn't tearful or romantic. It was cautious, respectful, raw. She asked me what had changed. I didn't try to impress her with anything. I just told her the truth, that I had finally stopped praying for God to fix her, or us, and started praying for Him to open my eyes. And that somewhere in that quiet process, I stopped being afraid of the silence. I told her I wasn't trying to win her back with grand gestures. I just wanted to be someone who could finally love the way she deserved to be loved. That meeting didn't end with us running into each other's arms. No, but it ended with her saying, "Maybe we can meet again next week." And we did. And again the week after that. Slowly, gently, love started learning how to walk again. Not sprint, not leap, just walk. One honest step at a time. We talked about boundaries, about trust, about therapy, something I used to roll my eyes at. We talked about forgiveness, and we even talked about prayer. She said she had started praying too. Not for me to come back, but for peace in her own heart. Funny how God works on people separately, and yet somehow brings them closer at the same time. The healing wasn't linear. We still had difficult moments. There were still tears, silence, pauses in conversation that felt like canyons. But now there was also prayer. And prayer made those canyons feel a little less wide. I'll never forget the first time she reached across the table and said, "Can we pray together?" I couldn't even speak, just nodded. And right there, in the middle of a busy Saturday at a loud cafe, two broken people closed their eyes and found that God was not only between them, He had never left. For years, I was convinced prayer was pointless. I thought faith was for other people. I thought love was something you just feel, or don't. But after all we went through, I realized something that changed everything for me. Prayer didn't just bring my wife back home, it brought me back too. I still remember that day clearly. She walked through the door after months of silence, packed bags left by the stairs, and a heart full of hurt. The house was heavy with tension. I wasn't sure if she came back for me or because she had nowhere else to go. I was scared, confused, angry. But instead of breaking down or begging, I did something I'd never done before. I prayed. Not some polished, formal prayer, just a raw, desperate plea. God, please help me be the man she needs. Help me listen, really listen. Help me love her better than I ever have. The next days and weeks weren't easy. We tiptoed around each other, both carrying scars that words couldn't reach. There were times when I wanted to give up, times I wanted to scream at the silence between us. But every morning I woke up and prayed again. I prayed for patience when I wanted to rage. I prayed for understanding when I felt lost. I prayed for forgiveness, for her, and for myself. Prayer became my quiet strength. One night, she finally opened up about her pain, how she felt alone, even when I was in the same room, how years of unspoken words and broken promises crushed her spirit. I didn't have answers. I didn't know what to say, but I prayed silently. God, help me hear her pain without defense. Help me be present. That night, for the first time in a long time, we connected. Not perfectly, not without fear, but honestly. I'll be honest, I'm still learning what it means to have faith. It's not about having all the answers or magically fixing everything overnight. It's about showing up, even when you're tired. It's about trusting in something bigger than yourself when life feels broken. Prayer changed me because it taught me to surrender my pride and control. It gave me hope when all I could see was darkness. We're still healing. The scars haven't disappeared. Maybe they never will. But now there's hope in those scars. There's grace. She's back. And so am I. We're rebuilding on a foundation I never knew was possible. One rooted in humility, forgiveness, and daily prayer. Why I'm sharing this with you. Because if you're watching this feeling hopeless, maybe your marriage is on the edge, maybe your heart feels broken, I want you to know something. You're not alone. You don't have to have all the answers, but you can start where I did, with a simple prayer from a heart that refuses to give up. If this story resonates with you, please drop a simple "I'm praying" in the comments below. Let's build a community of hope together. Don't keep this message to yourself. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that even in the darkest moments, prayer can bring light. And if you want to hear more real stories of healing, faith, and second chances, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Remember, miracles often start with a single prayer. Maybe this is yours.